Before I begin, I want to make it clear I don't see any video game mechanic as objectively bad. Just like how there's no bad color for painting with, video game mechanics all come together in order to make the entire gameplay of a game. It's how some mechanics in a game are handled that lead to them hurting the overall gameplay. I'm going to go more into detail about this in a bit. Regenerating health became standardized in the first and third person shooter genres since the release of Call of Duty 4 and Gears of War respectively. While they are definitely not the first to do it, with games like Halo and Tyrion having a regenerating shield system years before, it is definitely what contributed to it being the standard in both genres. I know I'm not going to be the first to have made fun of gooey eyes in place of a traditional health bar in video games before. I'm gonna try to give several in-depth reasons why it has had a negative effect on the shooter genre as a whole. The major reasons regenerating health has become standard in video games is more to do with the devs' ease than for the people playing the games. By not having a traditional health system, devs would be able to know the health of the player at the start of each firefight. This would make enemy placement in events easier for the devs, since the devs wouldn't need to think of as many situations for the player to be in before the start of each fight. Not only that, but good health placement takes good level design and generally rewards a player for either playing better or by looking around a map, which can't really be possible with most modern shooters being so linear these days. Let's look at how the mechanic normally works in most first and third person shooters. The player takes damage until their vision gets obscured by some on-screen effect telling them that they are in danger. The player then has to get out of the damage for a few seconds for his health to refill back to normal. Normally by hiding behind cover to prevent another bit of damage sustained from resetting the regen timer. I think the first issue with this is pretty obvious. The game is rewarding the player for not playing the game. Or to be more specific, the game is rewarding the player for hiding his head under cover and not doing anything. Not with health that'll permanently stay low until he finds a health pickup, but by making the player go behind cover and just crouch there for the amount of seconds required for the health bar to go back up. In most cases, the player could literally put down the controller and it would have no negative effect for the player. The next clear way this hurts gameplay is that it makes taking damage not mean anything. Unless the damage is able to outright kill the player, getting hit is in no way punishment, except for the player having to take a timeout from the game for a few seconds under cover. The player gets no lasting penalty for his actions. I could sort of see how one could make an argument that this is worth it, since the more casual audience doesn't want their bad actions to have lasting effects on them throughout the level. But this could be simply solved by having more medpacks or health stations scattered around the map on easier difficulties. While cover has been used in shooters before the popularization of regenerating health, it really only started becoming necessary after the standardization of it. Modern shooters have cover protect the player from damage and is the player's health station at the same time. Because of this, cover is extremely important in most modern shooters. This cover-centric gameplay of most shooters leads to fights basically boiling down to a game of whack-a-mole, where both the player and the enemy are trying to bop each other on the head. This leads to the gunplay of most modern shooters being extremely repetitive and take very little skill, since cover is now a magic wall of protection. Not every gameplay change caused by the introduction of regenerating health is so apparent. For example, regenerating health hurts possible enemy design. I'll be using one of my favorite first-person shooters to illustrate this. With regenerating health, a single enemy encounter either kills you, or you get off scot-free since any amount of health you lose simply comes back to you. In Half-Life 1, especially at the beginning before you fight the US Army, most enemy encounters aren't like this. It's very unlikely that any one encounter will kill you, but instead you'll probably die from the health loss from multiple different encounters. A meeting with a single or a couple head crabs, a bull squid, or one or two zombies is unlikely to kill you outright, but it will do damage, and you may succumb to it as that damage builds up over the course of a level. In a system with regenerating health, a head crab or a random zombie would be no danger to the player since it would be nearly impossible for it to kill you with its low damage output. Because of this, any enemy type or enemy encounter that can't kill you single-handedly has to be swapped out for a damage per second style of gameplay that revolves around usually humans with guns trying to focus fire you down before you can find your next bit of cover or charge enemies that are only made to continuously rush you for high damage. The player feels no tension before the next enemy encounter because his health is brought all the way back after each fight. Regenerating health hasn't just negatively affected single-player games. Multiplayer games have been affected as well. One example is how it has affected what is known as time to kill, or TTK for short. In a shooter without regenerating health like Overwatch or Team Fortress 2 for example, It generally takes several seconds of damage before an enemy is killed. However, in games with regenerating health like the modern Battlefield games, it only takes about a second for me or an enemy to die. In most modern games, TTK has gone down dramatically. This is a way to balance out the fact that all the health the player has will eventually regenerate. Because of this, shooters have basically become matches of peekaboo, because whoever sees the other player first has a drastic advantage, since he can kill the other player before the opponent even has time to respond. Sure, you could always kill someone near instantly with a precise rocket or headshot with a sniper on older shooters, but those are generally pretty hard to pull off. This has led to camping to become a successful strategy in many online shooters, not only because it means you have a much higher chance of the enemy player running into you, giving you a detection advantage, but also because the camping player doesn't have to go around the map searching for health once his health becomes low. The game is rewarding the player for hiding and standing still. To prove my point, you almost never see camping in arena shooters. The reason being is it simply wouldn't work there. But camping will always be a very viable strategy as long as shooters continue to have low TTK and regenerating health. At the start of this video, I said I don't believe any game mechanic is necessarily bad. I want to show examples in which regenerating health can be done without causing the issues I mentioned above. For example, Tribes Ascend is an online shooter with regenerating health, yet fails to suffer from camper or peekaboo combat. One reason is because nearly none of the weapons it has are hit scans. By that I mean a good player can carefully dodge almost any incoming fire. Instead of the player getting rewarded health by standing behind cover, the player is rewarded health for dodging attacks for a certain amount of time. This is also why I believe Tyrion works so well with this system. While it is a top-down shooter rather than a first or third-person one, it does have a shield system which regenerates if the player dodges attacks for a certain amount of time. In both cases, quick reaction time is rewarded with health. Then there is the Portal series. Since its main focus is puzzle solving, it would make perfect sense the player's health would regenerate quickly rather than forcing the player to go to a health station. This would give the player more time to spend on trying to figure out how to solve the puzzle ahead of them. As of late, it seems like a more traditional health system might be coming back to the shooter genre. New and popular shooters like Overwatch, Wolfenstein, and Doom have decided to use traditional health drops as one form of getting health back. In Overwatch's case, it uses both regenerating shields and a traditional life bar. I don't know exactly what the future holds for shooters, but I am personally looking forward to seeing how this possible switch will change gameplay moving forward.